Welcome to College Football Monday, a Sons of Saturday live show. I'm your host, PP. We've got Sam Jesse here. Sam, how you doing? And we've also got another guest tonight. We've got Dan from Tales from the TerrorDome. Dan, how you doing, buddy?
Can't complain, man. How you doing?
I'm good. Long time no talk, right? We just did your show yesterday. We're doing a home and home here. So we did a little bowl recap with Dan on his feed. Now we're doing a little playoff talk, a little bit of VT Corner later in the show, and back to previews for the semifinals, which are coming up this week, Thursday and Friday. This is a busy week of football. We got college, we got the championship for the FCS going on right now. Then we got college semis. Then we got wild card weekend. It is going to be a beautiful week of football. It never stops, Sam.
No, it does actually. It stops pretty soon here. So soaking in every moment, every quarter. No more bad bowl games to watch, but we got 2 semifinals, national title, the NFL playoffs. So soak it in because it's the longest off season in major American sports.
Yeah, it's getting shorter. It's getting shorter every year, just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. I think the next game is like Iowa State, Kansas State play on the 23rd. I think is the next like major regular season game. So quite a lot of time.
Sam, switch your mic input for me. Get on because you're on your computer mic. And then as soon as you got that straight, give us a cheers, buddy.
I got that here. It oddly wouldn't let me like select anything until you hit live. But my cheers, I actually haven't even poured my beer yet. My cheers is to these semifinal matchups because I think as much as we talked about 12 is too much, first round's blowout, I don't think you could ask for a better semifinal. You have 4 powerhouse programs, a ton of talent, a bunch of coaches who are really hungry, need to take the next step. So my cheers is to this somehow, some way working out in the end.
Cheers to that, man. All right. So in this episode, we will recap the quarterfinals, talk the latest news with the Hokies. I have the voicemails from the bowl game, and then we're going to preview the semis. Make sure you hop in the chat. We already had Chris hop in the chat. Give us some flames, which is appreciated. Ask us any questions you got for us as we kind of move through here. All the bye teams lost, Sam, and save this for after we kind of recap the games on whether you think that's a fluke or something that is what we might see again.
Taking a mental note.
Okay. All right, Dan, same to you, buddy. And then, like I said, we got North Dakota State up early on Montana State. This is not what me and Sam were expecting to happen. Of course, North Dakota State's still just a juggernaut. Can't be stopped. 14-3, North Dakota State right now. And in bowl season, now that it's pretty much over, except for these last 4 games, the ACC finished 2-11 in bowl games. And as what I saw on Twitter, we didn't cover a single spread. Is that correct?
0-13.
Oh my God. Yeah. It was not a good bowl season for the ACC, but what can you do, man? I mean, I think some of it had to do with the way teams getting in the playoffs and it altered matchups. Also, the conference just didn't do that well this year. Some years they do better. This year was really bad. I don't think there's so much to take away from bowl season in general, especially now, but the number looks bad. All right, let's talk Fiesta Bowl first, guys, because this was on New Year's Eve. Were you guys watching at whatever parties you were at? Were you out on New Year's Eve, Dan, or are you watching at home?
Oh, no, I was out. I was out at the bar. Yeah. I left. Like, they started doing karaoke, which I'm cool with, but, like, bro, like, I'm not. New Year's Eve, like, the music was already good. I was like, I'm not trying to hear people sing karaoke tonight, so I bounced. But, yeah, I was out. I watched it.
Nice. Yeah, I was over at a neighbor's house. We were watching, and if you remember in the beginning of that game, Penn State got up 14-0. And it's like, all right, this is what we expected. But Boise State did make it a game. They got a little bit competitive there, got a little feisty, especially at the beginning of the second half. Wasn't that when they had that long play down the sideline, Sam? And They were able to like just cut it a little bit closer. But overall, I do think the themes that we thought we'd see in terms of slowing Genty down, making Madsen beat you, that's what we saw. I thought Madsen did a pretty good job. They're just not They're not at that level.
I thought Madsen looked really good. And I thought, Genty ran his heart out. I thought their wide receivers did fine. I thought their corners did fine. It was just the difference was on the line of scrimmage. And it was pretty evident all night. It allowed Penn State to get some big plays in the first half. I thought it was competitive the whole time, but also Penn State looked to be a step or two ahead pretty much from kickoff. And that was to be expected, I think. And I think you're probably going to see similar G5 matchups in this playoff format going forward, where the team's competitive and they look like they belong on the field, but just maybe just like a step behind the whole time. Boise didn't really get that like crazy thing to happen that they needed.
And they turned it over 4 times. I mean, that like Genty fumbled twice. I think he lost one, and he hadn't fumbled basically all year.
Basically his whole career. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not the what do they call that? The signature of an upset or the anatomy of an upset. That's not what was going on here. But that does bring up a good question I got for you, Dan. Boise had a pretty sensational run. Their only loss during the regular season was to a very, very good Oregon team, which did get their doors blown off, and we'll talk about it. But Boise was a really good team. For the G5 in this climate where all of their players are generally getting poached, they held on to Genty, had a great season. Is this one of the best G5 teams you think we're going to see going forward in the playoff? Because I'm not sure it's going to get a whole lot better than this Boise team.
I mean, they're kind of like G5 royalty at this point. They've been doing this a long time. And they also benefit, I think, from where they're located. Like they have a lot to pull from as far as players like leaving those schools around them, like the USC, UCLA, Oregon State. Like I think they're in a good spot. I think you're going to see it get reseeded. I think you're more likely to see Arizona State versus Boise State moving forward than you are Boise State get a bye and then face Penn State. Genty, I mean, they knew they game plan well for him. Tom Allen and Anthony Poindexter had that thing dialed up. Drew Aller played pretty well. I'm still not a big Drew Aller guy, but that's a different story. But I don't know, like I feel like they capitalized in both games they played in because I thought that SMU had the horses, no pun intended. But every time they would drive the ball, there'd been 2 pick sixes and another interception in the first half. Like if you're winning the turnover margin that vastly, like you're going to win football games, especially when you can run the ball like they can with the running backs they have and the defense that they play.
Yeah, you said a couple different things there. In terms of them being G5 royalty, they are. And they're probably going to find themselves in this playoff again and again. And for a team like Boise State, the access to that money every year, like it's going to change their budgeting because like not often, I mean, a Tulane might pop up, but things are still shuffling in terms of the conferences too. But like they're going to have a chance to get an extra $4 million every single year by making this playoff. And if you look around the landscape, will we see teams want to drop out of the P5 or P4 to have that better access?
It makes sense. Like, why would you want to just get beat up in the big conference? Now, it makes sense from a like on the field football standpoint, but no athletic department is ever going to turn away the money.
No.
And that's the difference. And I think until there is some sort of equality around the 130 plus FBS teams, there will always be this line of demarcation. And it will show up in these big games. It always does. Like Boise needed something fluky to happen to have a chance in this game, and they just never got it.
Yeah. And their pass rush really impressed me because they did get after Aller. And that's something to watch as we going to see them play Notre Dame. Like, will that be able to happen again? Boise led the nation in sacks. They still have the lead. I think they maybe not in sacks per game, but in total sacks, they have the lead in the nation. And we didn't bring it up on the preview, and I should have because it was happening. And Drew Aller threw some really nice passes. They were able to run the football. Penn State was, and they overcame 10 penalties because Boise also had 13 penalties. I don't know if this was the ref show. There was a lot of penalties in this game. Yeah.
It was a ref show for both sides. Yep. And I believe I saw a stat coming into that game that officiating crew was a pretty flag heavy officiating crew. Okay. They lived up to the moment. Refs came to play.
Allen and Singleton combined for about 120 yards or 220 yards, I should say. So we'll probably, well, they're going to attempt to see some more of that when they go up against Notre Dame. Penn State won and covered. I think that's kind of what we thought would happen, Sam. I think we might have even said that in the preview when we had Irby on.
Yep. And the under.
All right. Well, let's talk about the one really fun game from this. Yeah, you guys did. Were you on the under or was that Irby?
I was under. Irby was over.
Okay.
That's a win for me. Sorry, Irby.
He won a lot of he won a lot of picks this past weekend. Though.
Yeah. We'll talk about this ice game against Texas, but I think there is you know how a lot of times in big NFL games like Super Bowls are kind of like this. Both teams are pretty like I don't want to say conservative, but they're not going guns a-blazing in the big game, right? I think we kind of saw that a little bit in these playoffs. Texas, Arizona State, as we're going to talk about, got up to a high score, but a lot of teams want to like run the ball, throw to the tight end, set up play action, 2 high safeties. Like there is a bit of like, don't lose the game at the beginning from teams that we've seen so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. So let's go to the Peach Bowl. This ended up being a fantastic game, but like you said, it was a slow start. 17-3 at the half. Texas wasn't looking great at all for the Sun Devils. But in the third quarter, they got the safety. They kicked a field goal. It was 17-8. But Texas kind of put them down again. They scored a touchdown, and they kicked the extra point to go up 16, which maybe at the time didn't seem like a big deal. But if you're Sark and you're playing those numbers, that was kind of a silly thing to do because Arizona State did the impossible, scored 2 touchdowns, got 2 2-point conversions, all on the back of Cam Scatterbu, who threw a touchdown pass, ran like a man possessed. He added to his legacy, got himself in the end zone with one of those with the second touchdown. And Texas missed 2 field goals late in the fourth quarter, and we headed to overtime. We got a touchdown for Arizona State, but Texas came right back with a touchdown and then a touchdown again and the 2-point, and Arizona State threw an interception. And I'm just trying to sum it up, but I can't possibly give you the drama that was ensuing over those couple of hours. Dan, that game was incredible. Were you locked into that one? Because I felt like I had to be wrung out like a rag afterwards.
Yeah, I was locked into that one. It was Kenny Dillingham, man. He gets those boys ready, dude. Like they're resilient. They're tough. Cam Scatterbu is amazing. What a horse. And their quarterback, is he a true freshman or a redshirt freshman?
He's a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, they got something there. They lost, Jaden Rashada went to Georgia. He left there, and now he's back in the portal because the portal always plays the hits. But I figured at one point like they were gonna make a run, and what they locked down Wisner for the most part. He did not have the game he usually has. And Sark actually ran him 18 times, which was also kind of what he needed to do. I thought Ewers, like the numbers look good, but he still looks off, man. Like, I don't know, like there's just something like he came through when he needed to come through. And I don't know if that was like defensive breakdown on Arizona State's part, but like he still looks hindered. And I think that's going to pose more of a problem moving forward.
Yeah, it looked like every play Texas had took 3 or 4 seconds to develop. And Arizona State made great adjustments, and they just started blitzing every play. They said, if you're going to sit back there for 3 seconds, we're going to bring an extra guy and get to you. And it happened time and time again. And Ewers, like, I don't think he missed a lot of throws, but it just felt like there were so many plays that you were like, it's like he got the snap and they just stood there. It was really weird because they came out and that game looked like it was going to be a blowout.
I think you summed it up good, Dan, because like Ewers had good numbers. The QBR was good. It looked like it was on its way to a blowout, but wasn't there a key interception at one point, right?
Well, there was towards the end of the game. So Texas was up. Texas was up 8 or something like that, and they had like a second down in the middle of the field. He took a shot in double coverage.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and it's like, what are you doing there? Just call a run play, and 2, if you're going to throw that ball, that guy needs to be wide open.
Mm-hmm.
And
the main takeaway for me from this game was just Scatterbu lived up to every bit of hype that he's gotten all year. And I think announcers also just like to say his name. So like it just gets said 1,000 times a game, but he was throwing up. I'm not exactly, did he have a stomach bug? Did he have the flu or was he just like nerves? I don't know, but he was throwing up, kept coming back in, making play after play. They actually outgained Texas by a pretty substantial amount. They had 24 third downs in the game, did Arizona State. 24 third downs. That is so many. They converted 10 of them. And as I said in my preview, with Arizona State, they don't have the same dudes as Texas. Like across the board, they just don't. But Dillingham finds a way to get this team to fight. Like you really can't quantify what they were able to do, especially being down 17-3, and you thinking like it's over almost, or like unless they get something going, they're screwed. And then they're down 16, and they come all the way back. And if they had gotten that targeting call, they would have won the game probably. And I'm kind of glad it wasn't called, because I wouldn't want the conversation to be about that. Kind of thought it was a targeting call, but I know no one knows the rules to that.
Arizona State got away with a worse targeting call. No one's talking about that one.
Okay.
It's yeah.
So I'm glad they didn't call it though, because it made it was fair. It was a heads up tackle, and went to OT, and Texas outlasted them. But I thought they'd cover. I thought they'd fight, and Arizona did both of those things. And Arizona State, I should say. And my one buddy said, like, if you see an Arizona State fan, just shake their hand for giving us the best playoff game that we got, because it's the only really good one we've had.
Is Scatterbo done?
Yeah, he's done. So. He's done.
And now they got Kanye Udo coming in. Like, it's just they're going to keep pounding the rock. Yeah. He probably he probably went to Arizona State for a visit from Army and was like, yeah, I'm staying.
Yep. Arizona State held the ball for 15 more minutes than Texas.
That explains
Texas just didn't
manage.
Yeah, Texas got up early, and then they didn't get the ball back for a while. And so this was one, like, they had the punt return touchdown, so that gave another possession back to Arizona State. There was the quick safety on the goal line on the busted blocking scheme that caused another quick turn. So Arizona State pretty much had like 3 more possessions than Texas and held the ball for 15 more minutes. So credit to Texas defense for, being able to get out there and still play. I don't think I've ever seen in a game like this. I don't think I've ever seen such a lopsided time of possession.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's why it was 510 yards to 375 or whatever. And Dan said this too, Levitt has a super bright future. I said how good his passing was just in terms of the advanced metrics before the game. And man, he delivered too. He really delivered in some of those spots. I know he threw the pick at the end of the game, but he's trying to make something happen. And but man, he could be a real good one. So something to watch as we move through the next couple of years of college football. Rose Bowl, guys. Ohio State blasts Oregon 41-21. This one did not go as expected. Not expected at all. I picked Ohio State to win, but I thought it would be the epic showdown we saw earlier in the year and the one that we hoped for. They were locked in from the jump, Dan. And whether it was the pass game or the run game, I felt like they could have put up 60 if they wanted to.
Yeah, Travion Henderson, Virginia kid. That one always hurts. But like, dude, Jeremiah Smith, true freshman, Igbuka, like, I made a joke. I was like, Oregon might just want to put Michigan down by their sideline or something, because like it seems to be the only mental wall that Ryan Day has. Like, they look like a juggernaut. Like, I did not expect Oregon to look that bad, or Ohio State to look that good. Like, I didn't. I was surprised.
Yeah, the Michigan loss just becomes more perplexing by the day, Sam.
Yeah, it does. And also this was just a weird performance from Oregon. I mean, we haven't seen them look like this in, I would say, 3 years since they opened the season in Atlanta against Georgia a few years ago. Just a shocking performance. And like, it was just the first like quarter and a half. Ohio State put up 34 points. They had 5 explosive plays down the field in the first quarter. They scored immediately pretty much every time. Oregon couldn't block anybody. I mean, After it was 34-0, Oregon outscored them 21-6. It was like, and I'm just saying, like, that's how much of a blitz Ohio State put on them to start the game. I don't think, like, do you think it surprised Ohio State a little bit? There's no way they were expecting in their best case scenario that to happen.
Everything just worked. Whatever play they called, whatever thing, the way they moved on the field, it just, every step was perfect. Every throw was perfect. The one to Ibuka, that pass was ridiculous. Like, this kind of changed my mind on Will Howard just a little bit. Like, in the last 2 games, we've seen them not only run just about better than any other game they've had, but he's passing at a much higher level now. They're using those weapons they should have been using against Michigan. And that, to go up 34-0 and then more or less just shut it down in a quarterfinal is crazy, because they didn't need to. And the defense, even without that offensive output that they did, that was so crazy. The defense was just crushing Dylan Gabriel, confusing him. 8 sacks, 13 tackles for loss, 9 passes defended for Ohio State. Like, they did everything and just shut them down basically completely until it was later in the second half.
Yeah, I think it got close, or they started to settle in for a second, and it was like, I remember Oregon got the ball back, and I was like, if they can score here, it's going to be close. It might be interesting. And then it was like instant 3 and out. And I was like, well, that was it.
Oregon had negative 23 rush yards. Henderson had 12 yards of carry. These are just some of the bizarre, like, statistical things that happened in this game, but it was dominance. And they clearly look like the favorite right now, fellas. It's hard to think otherwise. And they're going to take on Texas in the Cotton Bowl. And I'm curious as to your thoughts on that. But when this game ended, it was like, all right, give me Ohio State minus anything. Like, just give it to me now.
I jumped on Ohio State minus 4.5 real quick. It ballooned to 6. I think that's where it's sitting now. What's interesting is this is a very different matchup for Ohio State than what they've faced in the first 2 rounds. If Oregon had a weakness on their team, it was the defensive secondary. They didn't really have any lockdown corner. The safeties were really suspect. Same with Tennessee. Tennessee had issues, like against Georgia. They just had issues manning up on the outside. I'm curious to see what this looks like against Texas, because Texas can do that. They are elite on defense. They're probably the best defense in the country. I'm not going to say they're going to stop Ohio State by any means, because I don't think anybody can stop that offense when they're playing like that. But there is a bit of like Tyreek Hill on the Chiefs aspect to Jeremiah Smith right now. Excuse me, where it's like, how is he that wide open downfield? You don't understand. There's 2 guys with him. And I think that's part of the issue is defenses are doing things out of their norm in order to try to stop him. And in that are getting kind of confused. There's being some busted coverages, and guys are being asked to do things they're not normally used to do. And he's just wide open. I think Texas will be able to play a little bit more their game in this matchup.
He's just a cyborg, dude. Like, and now he's in a full season, more games than most freshmen ever play, because of the way this season has gone with the playoffs. So he's ready. He'll be ready to go, man. And I guess just to finish the thought on the Rose Bowl, I don't know what happened to Oregon. Never in a million years did I think they'd get served up like this. There were some warning signs, like the Wisconsin game was a warning sign, even the Idaho game, if you want to go back. And them getting scored on by Penn State in the Big Ten championship the way they did, none of us saw that coming either. And Ohio State also just has turned it up like 5 notches in the past month. So that was just crazy to me. I kind of feel bad for Dylan Gabriel, his career ending like that, because I don't necessarily think this was so much on him. It was an entire team thing, and he did like try to salvage it with some of his play, but like that was a tough look.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen I like that. It kind of reminds me of when Alabama played Notre Dame in that national title game, and it was just like one team played the game of their lives and the other team just never showed up. That's the only other time I've seen on a big stage like that. That was
TCU maybe.
But that was a talent thing. Like this wasn't a talent thing. This was just one team showed up and the other flat out did it.
Yeah. And it's crazier too because they played and Oregon beat them.
Oregon beat them. Oregon beat them and then like went 0 for 2 in the red zone in the second half and still beat them.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Let's talk about the Sugar Bowl. It got moved one day. So I was on my flight when this thing kicked off, only because it got delayed. So I landed right as things went up a notch for Notre Dame because it was 3-3 and Notre Dame scored 10 quick points before the half thanks to a Georgia fumble. They added another TD on the kickoff return of the second half. And just like that, Georgia's chances looked pretty grim. Georgia did manage a touchdown to keep it seemingly competitive in the third, but never scored again. This was the defensive battle we thought we would get. 300 yards for Georgia, only 244 yards of offense for Notre Dame. The difference was Georgia couldn't run the ball, and they needed to. Like, they really needed to be able to run the ball. The fumble was pretty killer, and they fumbled 3 times total and lost 2. Was this the team, Sam, we were talking about the fumble luck? Or was that a different team?
Yes, because at one point in this game, Georgia had fumbled the ball 21 times and only lost 5 of them. That is ridiculous. And then all of a sudden, Notre Dame got 2 fumbles, and that was the ball game. And that's not like an anti-Georgia thing. That's just like the only reason they were able to keep it with Georgia Tech is they recovered their own fumble a few times. Against Texas, the only reason that game was in overtime is because on the drive to score their touchdown to take the lead, they recovered their own fumble twice.
Yes,
and so it's like you saw these warning signs with Georgia, like, oh man, like they can't really run the ball. They're getting a lot of fumble luck. They can't really throw the ball. They were really just not able to be great. And like they weren't super elite on defense. They were good, but they weren't creating as many like crazy havoc plays as they were against Texas earlier in the season. So there were warning signs for Georgia. And I also think, it makes Steve Sarkisian not running Arch Manning in that game look even more ridiculous because Riley Leonard was like 5-6 yards easy immediately, but before even really having to make a move on anybody. So we'll be really curious to see if Kirby Smart tries to address that this offseason because it's pretty constant throughout the year, an issue for them. There's an issue against like Mississippi State too, like everybody.
What did you think of Riley Leonard in this game, Dan? And just in terms of him, his quarterbacking level, and do you think he's good enough to win a national title?
That's tough. I think he is gritty enough. I thought he didn't have the best. He only had 92 yards passing.
But the stats didn't jump off the page.
Yeah,
no,
80 yards rushing. But he did what he needed. They relied on a run game, special teams contributions, great defense from Marcus Freeman, and Riley made a play when he had to make a play. And then they had a little assist from the walk-on cornerback, number 39 for Georgia, that ended up at the back of the line real quick when he tripped that ref or whatever. But Notre Dame, dude, like normally they are high fraud alert when they get in the playoffs. Like they have never shown up. And this year, man, it feels different. Like Marcus Freeman's got they had a pretty big damn distraction they had to deal with, and they were still came in locked in. So I don't know if they're going to win the national championship, but I think they're going to give you a run.
Yeah. And if you look at their path as opposed to Penn State's path, it wasn't too easy. And before I get to my last couple takeaways on Riley Leonard, the stats weren't great, but he did show what he can do. And as Sam said, he can break down a defense with his legs. He was the best runner in the field of the playoff teams in terms of quarterback. And that's what Notre Dame does. They don't have elite players on the outside. They've got some good running backs. They've got a couple guys, Faison and Greathouse, that can make a couple plays, but they don't have a Warren, they don't have an Abuka. But Riley is kind of putting them on his back. And that's what he's going to have to do. And Marcus Freeman in this game made some really nice calls, Sam. I thought throughout the game, he kind of outcoached Kirby.
I think we need to say this sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. We need to start talking about him as one of the better big game coaches in the sport right now. Because if Notre Dame's in a big game, they play really darn well. Like I know there was that gaffe against Ohio State, but that was still a really good game. Look at how they played against Texas A&M this year. Look at how they played in their 2 playoff games, the ingenuity, the ability to play with the clock. They're the best middle 8 team in the country by a mile this year. And that's the middle 8, meaning the last 4 minutes of the second half and the first 4 minutes of the third quarter. They're very, very good in that area of the game. He can win it. Like, they have a defense to win a national title. They have an offensive line to win a national title. They have a coach to win a national title. The issue is Ohio State might just drop 40 on everybody.
Right.
So who knows? Like, that's really it.
They're a good team. They are a good team. And my main takeaway, I think, going forward for Notre Dame is that you don't have the warm and fuzzies about the offense. But it was Georgia and it was Kirby Smart, and they beat them. Like, there's a lot of people that are SEC fans that just assume Georgia was going to beat Notre Dame. Like, come on now. This is Georgia Notre Dame. We've seen, Notre Dame go up in these big games before, like Dan said, and just get killed. Well, that's not what happened here. And I know they didn't have their starting quarterback. Gunnar Stockton was fine. But Notre Dame put a lot of pressure on him. And, the Notre Dame offense didn't have to go up against Gunnar Stockton. They had to go up against a Georgia football defense. And they did enough to win. It wasn't pretty, but they did enough to win, and they won the game by 13 points. So I think that was one of the toughest outs in this tournament. The SEC champion, even without Carson Beck, is a really tough out, and Notre Dame did it. So this is not fluky. This is not, they got to play Indiana in round 1. They had a harder path than Penn State. This was a much more difficult path than Penn State just had to go through, and now these teams are going to face off. It sets up a really interesting matchup in the Orange Bowl. Keep in mind, too, that Notre Dame had 10 penalties in the game to Georgia's 5 and still won by basically 2 touchdowns. So it was a really nice performance. Going back to the original question, 0-4 for the bye teams, Sam.
Yeah, I think you can say that some of the issues were rust. I think when you have that long off from hitting somebody, that long off from playing at game speed, I think that'll have an impact on you. I would also point to even some of the teams you played a little bit better. Boise State played a little bit more competitive. Arizona State played a little more competitive. The beginning of those games, the first quarter, they got blown off the field. I mean, Arizona State, it was 14-0 in a blink of an eye. Boise State looked like they didn't belong for that first quarter of the game. So the beginning of those games, getting to the game speed.
That's a good point.
That was the difference. And then you saw in like the Ohio State-Oregon matchup, the difference was Ohio State was too good for Oregon to make up that ground. And they just kept going. That was the difference there. So I think, does it mean something? Yes, it does. I don't think it explains everything, but it is a factor. And I'll be interested to see going into next year, no matter how they end up seeding this thing, if it's 12 teams, if it's 14 teams, like they're going to have somebody on a bye unless they get to 16 teams. Yeah. So somebody's going to be on a bye. If somebody's on a bye, how do they react to that? Because that's a month is a long time off of football physically. Like that's like, imagine.
True, but all the teams that played that had a bye did at least play in the championship games. So it's one less week than some other teams.
Yeah.
Like Ohio State, they had a bye because they didn't play in the championship game. And then they came out against Tennessee and they were great. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think
Tennessee and them played the same amount of games. So I guess that
Tennessee might have just been ass too. Like that's possible.
I mean, Nico's been questionable some this year, right? Dylan Sampson, they really relied on him a lot.
And he couldn't play. So that changed that game.
So
nobody would be calling Nico questionable if he was hitting outside for University of Hawaii. That's all I'm saying.
Sam wanted him to play volleyball.
Go on, Dan. Sorry.
What was it really like? Was it the bye as much as it was the matchup? Like,
Yeah.
Oregon,
I mean,
they had
I
a
think
month off, and then they had Ohio State come in, and then Boise State played a team that had, I mean, Tyler Warren. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just talent disparity, and I don't know if it was as much the bye as it was
if you had
the
whittled
matchup.
down, if you had Arizona State and Boise playing on the first round of the playoffs, they play Clemson, they play Tennessee, they play these other teams. You've now whittled that down, and I don't think Boise's going in and beating Penn State if Penn State had a bye. Like I don't think that's happening. So I think it was largely due to the matchups and the seeding, which I think they're going to do everything in their power to try to change that for next season. At least not guaranteeing conference champions, top 4 seed.
My last thing on the bye weeks and the seeding, it will be interesting, dude. And this is kind of was talked about a little bit. How much do teams try to play the system next year after seeing this year's result? Do you get a coach who like sits his players towards the end of the season? Do you get a player who's like, oh, you know what? That home field looks pretty nice, and that chance to play, and like, hey, that G5 team, they don't look too good. What if we just hosted them real quick?
I just think it's too hard with the this isn't football, this isn't NBA where like you can kind of pick your spots. Like there's only 12 shots in the regular season. And if you screw one up because you start getting cute, then you might get left out altogether. So jockeying for position, especially when the committee, it's not a standings that you can kind of like, oh yeah, this is how we could get if we just beat this tiebreaker. No, you have no idea what they're going to do.
If Oregon wouldn't have beaten Penn State, they would have had Indiana at home, and then they would have played, like Georgia's a much better matchup for them than Ohio State. That's all I'm saying. Like and it was pretty obvious that they were going to be the 5 seed if they lost that Penn State game. I'm just saying.
There would have been that whole newcomer can't win the conference narrative. Like, I feel like it made more sense for them to belong.
I just don't in college football, the idea of being able to like throw a game away seems preposterous. I hope we never get to that point. I don't think even in the FCS playoffs where there's tons of teams, no teams are doing that because ultimately you don't know how that one loss, Sam, Indiana, whatever it is, that could have changed the way the standings played out. And then you're playing a completely different team. I just think it's too hard to game out.
It's very true. I'm just saying
it could happen. And Dan Lanning would probably be the first one to do it.
Yeah, a coaching staff is going to think about it.
Yeah, he'll think about it for sure.
They're not going to say it, but they're going to think about it.
All right. My favorite was Alabama being like, oh, well, it doesn't give the SEC incentive to play tough out-of-conference opponents. And I was like, you play Mercer in November. What are we talking about?
Yeah, and the out-of-conference wasn't the issue. It was the in-conference. Like, you lost the games in conference to Vanderbilt. Oh, God. I could go on, but I've already done it this year. Let's go to our sponsor, and then we're going to go to VT Corner. College Football Monday is brought to you by Rhoback. You guys know Rhoback, the performance activewear designed for those who crave activity. They're the polo company that brought you the Commonwealth, the TV logo polo. They've got the game day polo with the VT fingers and all kinds of different stuff on it. So many different Virginia Tech licensed pieces of merch that you can buy at Rhoback. Use code 2DEEPVT for 20% off your order. They also have stuff for women, tennis skirts, joggers, those suits that are, the leisure suit kind of things that they have. Go there, use code 2DEEPVT, load up your cart, Rhoback, crave activity. Let's go to VT Corner, fellas. Tonight is not going to be so much on the bowl, although we are going to talk about it. I want to get up to speed on a couple notes first, though. Another offensive lineman has jumped in with the Hokies. He comes over from West Virginia, this time in the form of Lucas Austin, 6'6", 287 is what the release was I got offline. He's from Illinois originally, 0.86 in the composite in the class of 2024. He's a young man, and an 89 on 247's in-house rankings coming out of high school. He was the 40th ranked tackle in the country in his class. Kyle Altuner was in Blacksburg this past weekend as well. He had the uniform on out in the snow. Physically, both of these guys look ready to play, but particularly Altuner, Dan. I think I'm getting pretty excited because now we've got 14 offensive linemen in the fold for 2025, and I'm starting to feel more comfortable about where the roster's sitting.
Yeah, dude, Hoss. That dude's a Hoss. And Mary Hossmas, I'm excited to get some beef in the room. Some people, and they have experience with this coach. They've already been developed by him or in the process of being developed by him. He was listed as a tackle coming out, but Coach Moore moved him to center, so he's been working at center all this past year. So might have our answer for Braylon Moore there. I'm sure there will be a little. I would imagine there would be some competition there with the in-house Hokies, but you know, I'll never turn down a good competition. Good competition makes everybody better, and there's no better motivator than fear of losing your job. So bring them in.
Yeah, Sam, are you to the point now where if we did not bring in another offensive lineman, you'd be all right with 14?
Yeah, I think so. Because there are other areas that they need to bring guys in, and there are some promising young players. Johnny Garrett, Lath Gannum, some guys like that on the team. Tommy Ricard, bummer we didn't get to see him in the bowl game, but heard really good things about him.
And that's related because of what Dan just said. Because Altuner is a center.
Mm-hmm.
Ricard was supposed to play center, but what happened? He got sick or something before the bowl?
I don't know for sure, but he wasn't able. He was running with the twos, wasn't in game shape for.
Okay.
I think he was like sick or something. But he didn't come in as a center. He came in as a guard. So he could. I think it was they needed somebody to play center because they didn't have anybody else. So I think that's why he was like slotted into center right there. So
gotcha.
I would say this going into next year, there are 5 players play on the offensive line. If I'm not mistaken, all 5 positions are up for grabs, all 5. And I think you're going to have guys mix around to different positions. I think you're going to have some guys play, they'll play right tackle in the spring and they'll play right guard in the summer. Like there's going to be some movement there. Everything is open. There's also, to move on from offensive line, we just got another portal commit.
Yeah. Speaking of Mercer.
We had another one. We want to do the Mercer one first?
Oh, wait.
We'll do the Mercer.
I'm not even sure I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, so I'll do this one since you clearly don't have the notes on it. Somebody didn't come prepared.
Spicy.
James Joncom, middle linebacker for Eastern Michigan. Now I know you're saying like, oh, middle linebacker, Eastern Michigan. This guy had an 83.1 overall grade on PFF. A 91.2 pass rush, 98 tackles and 4 sacks as a middle linebacker, second team all MAC, had like 30 something tackles tallied up in their last 2 games.
When did this happen? This happened like 10 minutes ago.
It did not happen before.
Literally like 10 minutes ago.
I've been hosting the show
before the show. Before the show, it did not happen.
That's awesome. Honestly, that is awesome.
My reaction was on camera was real. It was not theatrics like that. Mike linebacker, you couldn't if you were like, brother, like, would you rather have Jesus or a Mike linebacker? Like right now, I might take Mike linebacker because I don't know if I could do another offseason of, maybe Jaden Keller is ready. Like this dude, like if he is what he is and he looks like he is, like the film is good, like he will absolutely help our defense. 100%.
6'3", 245. He's bigger than the defensive end that you're going to talk about right now from Mercer.
That is fantastic, dude. Yeah, no, we needed a linebacker. We needed a portal linebacker. We've been saying that for a little bit. And I'm doing I'm just hearing this for the first time. Based on what I'm hearing with the PFF grades, that sounds pretty good, dude. And I'll take that size all day, every day.
His Twitter handle is the Ginger Freak.
Hell yeah.
Wait, is he red hair?
Yeah.
He
does.
It's a white dude.
Oh, no.
Oh. Okay, then.
The ginger freak? I like it, dude. Let's get freaky in Blacksburg.
I don't even know what's going on right now, but that
you don't need to know. Don't worry about it.
That sounds good.
We signed some dude called the Ginger Freak. And
the Ginger Freak.
6'3",
What's his name
245.
again? Jock? What would you say?
The ginger freak, dude. That's what we're going with.
No. His name is James Jonkam. Gjonkam. Yeah.
Cool. And then we added was it a defensive end for Mercer? A little bit smaller. I thought he might have been a defensive tackle, but I wasn't exactly sure because that one also came across late in the day. Someone did say this in our chat that when it comes to getting linemen from FCS, it's always maybe a little bit more of a concern because the skill players, the translation could be a little bit better. I mean, we saw with Bashal Tootin, didn't really matter at all. When you're going up against size, it might make a difference, but we see FCS players get drafted in the NFL and kick butt. So, I mean, going up a level or two might not be such a big deal, but another position, we needed more D linemen. So I'm glad we added one.
If you're going to take him, he was arguably the first or second best defensive lineman in FCS. And there were a lot of people that I saw on the internet were like, why isn't this dude first team? Why is he second team? So, like, if you're going to take a shot on FCS kids, like, that would be one. And also to clarify, I would not choose a player over our Lord. But it was it was just funny. It was funny delivery, yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. I did hear that he was All-American at that level on some team. So for what it's worth, that is something to keep in mind. Wasn't Stone Snyder also All-American at the FCS level? So this can go the other way.
Well, I think he was just ready to be a family man.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you also need to build some depth there. I mean, you lost TJ McCray. You know you're losing APR. Like
Madison.
Madison. Like edge isn't a position that Virginia Tech has necessarily recruited super well over the past two cycles. So definitely feel like they need somebody there.
Oh yeah, edge, because Cole Nelson's gone. Like they're CJ McCray. You said okay.
Yeah. So they needed bodies at the pass rusher position, right? And I would also say just in terms of the transfer portal gets, like, again, say what you want about this staff. They have a lot of faults. Very precise, strategic additions in the transfer portal. They're not going out there and getting guys that they already have that position. Like they're going out and getting guys that they absolutely need. So
they're now all they have right now.
All that has to do is work out. That's all it has to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's the simple part, right, Sam?
Yeah. And also they have to work out in the offseason with a real strength and conditioning.
Yeah. Work out. Correct. We need a coach. We need a couple of coaches still waiting on that news. I think now is a good time to get into the voicemails, guys. So let me just go to my media here and I'm going to play these for you. And then we'll do a little bit of bowl talk. All right, here we go.
I think I just promised the entire Sunday Saturday group chat of like 30 people that I would buy them beers if John Love made the field goal, and he did. This will for sure bankrupt me.
Was Coach Fry really wanting to win that game? Because I don't think he really wanted to win that game. The play calling, the quarterback switching back and forth.
That was about what I expected. Saw some good things out of the young guys. Adams, Law, Green.
Not gonna lie, doing understand, man. I had wild turkey and beer in my stomach, and I almost threw up, but I made it through. Can we play Colin Schlee? Question mark. He gave us a touchdown drive. I feel like he's our answer right now. Go Hokies.
When Schlee was in, the offense had a lot more life to it. But no, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I don't get his decisions. It does not make any sense to me.
These are just spring games in big cities where they can just take all the money out of our pockets.
I really just thought he just treated this game as a scrimmage, like a practice. And I don't think he even cared to win this game.
Hey, Pete and Sam. P. McGee. I wrote a poem similar to the beginning of the season. I'll bookend this with another poem. Here it goes. The grueling slog has finally finished. Our hope started strong. Now it's diminished. What could have been wasn't meant to be. Crestfallen, my Hokies have done this to me. 6 wins and 7 losses. A pitiful season. How could this have happened? Please give me a reason. I need to see something. a small, measly nugget, but all I was given was a mop and a bucket. To clean up my puddles of tears, sweat, and vomit, this team was outmatched. We all watched and saw it. Fire that guy. Let him walk. Oh, and him too. What choice did Pry have? It's all he could do. I sure hope these changes will prove a success, because the 24 Gobblers were truly a mess. I'll take a well-deserved break, maybe take a vacation. I certainly need my attention to change its location. But I know in my soul I'll be back to stand up and cheer, because it's forever go Hokies, year after year. Thanks, guys. Great season of coverage anyway. Bye.
Great calls. Thank you for an awesome season of calls on the whole. We heard from Kevin. We heard from Hack. We heard from Pete McGee. Nick. Everyone was in there. All of our normal guys for the most part. I did think some of the commentary was interesting. Kevin saying, I don't get Pry's decision. He treated this like a scrimmage. And Hack saying these are the non-playoff bowls. They are just an excuse to take money out of our pockets. They're just they're spring games in big cities. And, it's funny because I fall on both sides of that argument. I knew full well what I was getting into going down to Charlotte. I think the three of us did. But part of me still wanted us to not treat it like a scrimmage, play the best quarterback, try to win. But you're also trying to reward some of these guys that work real hard, didn't get a chance to play so much during the regular season, and then get to go out there in front of a crowd and prove themselves a bit. Sam, what were your thoughts just on the voicemails and the idea of the bowl game being more of a scrimmage?
Well, first off, thanks for the voicemails. It's a really fun and funny part of this show. They're always very creative, so thank you. Look, on one hand, I do understand, like, if you're going to go out there and play, you want to play to win the game. On the other hand, like, what did you really want Brent Pry to do in this game? Like, realistically, what did you want him to do? He didn't have an offensive line, right? He didn't have his best wide receivers. He was going up against a top 15 defense who they're maybe missing a few players, so let's call him top 30. One of the best defenses Tech has played all year. And defensively, he had no pass rush, and he was down his best two corners. Like, what do you really want him to do in this game? Like, he went out there and he played the reserves and he ran the plays that they could run. Like, I saw a couple tweets while I was live tweeting the game from the press box. Like, why aren't they running more screens? Why aren't they running more deep passes? Like, you can't do that.
There's no time to
with
develop.
Reserve offensive linemen. Like, you just can't do it. It's not in the playbook tonight. And I understand the frustration of wanting them to win. I wanted them to win. I'm sure they wanted to win the game, but you were also going into that game seeing like, okay, well, let's pick a small section of plays and see if Pop can do them. Or here's our Pop Watson package. Here's our Colin Schlee package. Defensively, you're saying, hey, this walk-on guy, is he a scholarship guy? Could he help us with depth? What does Dante Lovett look like in isolation on the island? You're looking for those kind of things. Those are more important to the program in 2025 than playing a close game, or it was a pretty close game, to be honest, or beating Minnesota in what is a glorified scrimmage in 30-degree weather in front of 20,000 people.
And I think it does depend on the situation, the two coaches, what time of year the game is. Like, this was a late bowl game.
Yeah.
A lot of guys have already committed to other teams. But for instance, though, South Carolina and Illinois, you had both quarterbacks who are coming back next year. You got a lot of guys returning for both teams. That was a really good game. There are certain situations where both teams don't have too many portal departures or too many guys that are going to the NFL, and you get a great bowl game out of it. But everyone is different, and I just think like this bowl game is too late. I don't know why we're playing this game on January 3rd. Like, just it was fun to go to and all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of fans are still getting used to the idea, especially older fans, that these games are being treated like scrimmages. It's frustrating. I totally identify with the frustration. But every couple years, we're going to get our team like last year, where we pretty much have everyone in our bowl game. And we went out and we played hard and we won. Now, Tulane didn't, but we were on the other side of it last year. And we just did not have a shot when you have three offensive linemen out and the kid you were supposed to start at center also couldn't play because of unknown reasons with her card. So like, it was a bad recipe, Dan. But I think Pride did the best he could trying to get inexperienced guys reps.
Yeah. If you're actually legitimately mad about that game, like, come on, man. Like, I'm not telling you how to feel, but like, I went to Charlotte knowing it might get ugly. It didn't. It was way better than that pinstripe outing, which is why I made the comment that on Tales from the TerrorDome that I feel like Brent Pry has raised the talent floor in the last couple of years, because we were way more competitive against that Minnesota team than obviously we were against that Maryland team. But I wanted to go to Charlotte. I wanted to hit bars, see my friends, have a good time, have one last Hokie soiree, like communion before April. Like, I mean, well, I'm sure I'll see some people at basketball games or wrestling or whatever, but like, nothing brings it like football. Like, everybody comes to town for football. And I mean, my buddy, Barrick said it best. He's like, he's like, my closest friends I see like 3 months of the year. like, you know what I'm saying? So like, I don't know. I saw good things. Dante Lovett looked like who we needed him to be. Aiden Green looked like who we had wanted him to be. I thought he played Pop more, even though Schlee was moving the ball, because Pop still, I mean, we're still keeping Pop's going to be around. Like, there's a valuable reps for him, especially with Kyron.
And that's what I would tell Kevin, who had that voicemail. It's just like, that's why we saw more of Pop. I agree with you that Schlee looked more effective. At the same time, Schlee completed 2 passes. So one of them was a really good one, but like, it's not like Schlee was lighting it up either. It was 2 of 6. The reason we saw the switching, the reason we saw Pop more is because they're trying to figure out what they got. That's what they're trying to do.
And I thought Josh Clark and Thomas Williams looked pretty good over there. It was a rough pass interference on Josh Clark, but he's a young kid, first game, first action. I did not think the dude for Minnesota caught that football, but I did not have the vantage point or the viewpoint on that one.
Can I talk about that real quick? Because I think I saw stuff that you wouldn't have seen if you were watching on TV. Okay, so that was, he caught the ball, hit the ground, ball bounces out, rolls around a little bit, hits the ground, right? We saw the replay in the box. It was an incomplete pass. Everyone thought it was an incomplete pass. They go to a TV timeout because of an injury. All right, they're going to review it. There are 2, they're not officials, but there's 2 people who man the replay little booth that they roll out there. Those 2 got the signal from the replay official, and then they signal out to the field, hey, we're going to review this. They bring the little thing out there for the ref to peep into, to look at it, as well as replay officials. The official in the game just never went over. I've never seen anything like this. He just stood there and looked at them, talked to some other officials, talked to the
he didn't look at the screen.
Didn't look at the screen. Didn't do it. They come back from TV timeout. The refs huddle, talk a little bit. They say play ball. And there are some really confused people from the SEC on the sideline. So I don't know what happened there. I've never seen anything like that.
That ref crew was awful.
They were
absolutely
awful. But that was like, okay, like, oh, that should have been a PI. They didn't call it. Oh, that should have been a holding. They didn't call it. That's one thing. Procedurally mess up like that, or to have something weird happen, that was strange. I don't know if I've ever seen that live at a football game.
Yeah, that's stupid, man.
I also thought Pry was going to get ejected. Like,
well, that
seemed like
beeline, and I was like, "Let's go, dude."
I believe there was a consensus that they were going to review the play, and they just didn't. And I think it just boiled over because it was 3 or 4 calls in a row that didn't go Tech's way, and that, like, Tech didn't lose this game because of the officials. Let me put that out there, but that was what turned the tide of the game in Minnesota's favor. Was a couple of those plays. So that's just what I saw.
A couple last things here before we move on to our previews for the semis. Got a couple comments. One from Billy talking about the crowd size. We had talked about this during the game, that I felt like in 2016, it was way more full because I sat in the upper deck in 2016. It was almost 47,000 for the 2016 Belk Bowl. It was 31 for this. And there was no way. I don't think there was any way there was 31,000 people there. That was paid. But it gives you an idea that there was 15,000 less paid attendance or 16,000 less paid attendance in this game than there was back in 2016. And that kind of shows you where we're going with bowl games. Even as recently as 2016 and 2019, the 2 times we played in the Belk Bowl, bowls had a lot less opt-outs and a lot more significance in people's minds than they do right now. It has degraded very quickly. And then we also have another comment from Les Hodges. Now that the season is over, looking back, what were your favorite offensive, defensive, and special teams plays for the Hokies this year? Great question. Maybe it needs more thought, but special teams, we got the return from Jalen Lane. That was pretty dang good in the Marshall game. We had the field goal.
Just the 60-yarder?
The 60-yarder,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the 60-yarder.
Yeah, that was sweet. We blocked the kick against Clemson?
Yeah, that might be mine.
Oh, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty badass. That's old school, right? Like that's the stuff we love with the block kicks. So I think that's special teams, offensive and defensive. Do you guys have any thoughts? Best place?
It didn't go our way, but the Hail Mary against Miami from Kyron.
It's definitely if you're talking about key plays of the season, it's one of them for sure.
Offensive, that Pop Watson's pass to Jalen Lane in the UVA game was pretty sick.
Yeah,
it was.
That was pretty sick. I mean, it was a thing of beauty because you knew the second he let it go that it was a touchdown. What
about the rush TD by Tootin at the end of UVA?
That was also really fun.
When he blew that guy down and then he blew that guy down. Jesus. He ran into
beating the allegations.
Four or 5 people and then ran for the touchdown. Oh, in the Stanford game, the Felton catch.
Yep.
The Felton catch and run. That was nasty. Because the ball was a terribly thrown ball and he reached back, grabbed it, and took it to the house, I believe.
Defensively, I would have to say, some of those fourth down stops against Georgia Tech, where the defense, it was the fact that the defense just kept doing it over and over again. That was pretty sick. I would say though, for me, when I look back on my positive memories from this year, the Boston College game, far and away the best. And then the ecstatic relief of the UVA game when Tech just marched down the field and scored on the first drive, and you knew it was just going to happen again. Those are my 2 moments from this year.
Did you have a defensive one, Dan?
Not in particular. Maybe Dorian Strong's 2 interception game, things like that. But
yeah, APR had a 4-sack game, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking of Keller's 4th down stuff against Boston College, which I really think turned that game because we were letting it slip, and Keller stuffed that man on 4th down, and then we went on and crushed him. So that one sticks out to me in my head as the defensive play of the season because it preserved what was an amazing record-setting night and probably, like Sam said, the best night of the year. Great question, Les. And if I actually come up with my definitive answers, maybe we'll talk about it on the show in a future episode. Last thing I want to mention, guys, you talked about Dante Lovett in this game, Dan, how he stepped up, did what we thought he could do, and what we're going to need him to do. Well, he had some comments on the season, which came out. At least I saw them today. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he essentially said that they were feeling themselves this past offseason. And this is more or less a quote. We're going to be an underdog next year. That's probably the best position we could be in. Because when you're an underdog, it makes you work. And then he kind of went on to say, we got a little bit caught up in the hype coming into 2023. And that whole, because when you're an underdog, it makes you work. He's not lying. And I appreciated the honesty and I respect the commentary, but I get this is what we thought happened is that they were feeling themselves. They were listening to the press clippings, reading that kind of stuff, and maybe they didn't work as hard as they could. Maybe they weren't as focused as they could have been, and it led to what we saw against Vandy and beyond this year. I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
have any comments on that or if
I would
I
agree
don't
with
know.
that. I think maybe there was some. I think there were different ideologies in the locker room, maybe about what hard work was. I think maybe there were some people that I don't know if everybody was bought in. Maybe that's what I got from his comments, and it was a nice way of not singling anybody out, but still having accountability for the whole team.
Yeah, that's also a classic end of season comment by a player who's coming back. Like if you look around bowl season, you're going to see that exact quote 5 or 6 times. I'm just saying that. But I think it is true that this team clearly didn't have the mentality from day one of this season.
Yep.
To go out and have that winning mentality, right? Like I wrote in my article, that's the biggest addition they could make this offseason. It's not a coach. It's not a player. It's like they got really good at losing, right? Like there are some players on this team who have, let's be honest, like they've lost a lot of football games that are pretty inexplicable to lose. And so I think that's the next step for this program is, and this is weird to say for Virginia Tech, a program that won a ton of games in 2 decades, learning how to win, learning how to win consistently. And I think that starts in your preparation. And I just don't think this team had that this offseason.
They just need to change the approach all the way around.
Yeah.
Just change the approach, the way you attack game day, the way you attack the week of prep. Everything needed to be ripped down and restarted for next year. I know a lot of what he said was obvious to us, Sam, but it does crystallize when you hear a player who is going to be a leader for us next year actually say it. And like I said, I respected the fact that he said
it. And Pry alluded to some of the same things as well, too. You know, he alluded to that. This team is in a better place, but they got to figure out the mentality side, to put a word to it.
All right, so the 2 Deep Bowl recap that Sam and I recorded on location in Charlotte is already in your feeds. The bowl recap I did with Dan yesterday morning is already in your feed. So if you want more bowl talk, Charlotte talk, whatever, go and find those 2 things. For right now, fellas, let's hop right into – Sam, are you drinking a beer, by the way?
Yes, I am.
Oh, what do you have?
I need one after today. Today I am drinking the German Hefeweizen from Wasserhound. It's as it sounds, it's a Hefeweizen, which is a German wheat beer. Wasserhound is from Virginia Beach here. If you haven't had a Hefeweizen before, it's one of my favorite style of beers. It's really crisp, it's really light, but it still has a lot of depth to the flavor. You get a lot of like caramely banana is kind of the flavor that comes out. Neither of those things are in here, but it's really, really good. This is a pretty popular brewery amongst locals down here in the 757, and it's a very good one. So a pretty cool can with a German Shepherd on it as well.
What's the name of the brewery again?
Wasserhound.
Wasserhound. I like that can. That's
yeah,
nice.
Sick can. Really good Hefeweizen beer. This is like a 4 for me. It's a really crisp Hefeweizen. It's really good.
I am taking it easy tonight. As you know, Sam, I put myself in a body bag this past weekend. And so
10 hours, no water.
10 hours, no water on game day.
Damn.
And then the next day,
what a text to receive.
The next day, I met up with Sam, and I was hurting so bad. Like, I took down about 5 golden grenades while we were recording. That's the Coors Banquets, as opposed to the Silver Bullet there. And man, I was feeling good, feeling no pain when I got on my flight, and I got home in one piece. But now I would say I'm drinking a seltzer, but it's actually, look at this. This is embarrassing. It's a Bud. It's a Bud Zero. Because, I still like beer. And honestly, it's one of the better alcohol-free beers. If you're going to sit and have something like that, I had some with my food earlier. Like, you want a beer with food, but you don't want to drink. Bud, Coors Edge is decent. The Corona is great. I know Robbie has talked a lot about alcohol-free beer on this show in his last year. This is a rarity for me, but a necessity, at least coming down from Charlotte.
Does it have like if you're drinking like a Budweiser or something, it doesn't have much of it to start with, but does it have that slight bittery twang that you get from alcoholic beer? That's an all alcoholic beer.
It's as close as you're going to get. This is one of the closest ones. Like, I've had a lot of alcohol-free beers over the last, year or so. You can tell on most of them that they are alcohol free. This one, if you weren't paying attention, you might not notice, but if you are paying attention, you will notice. But if you're eating, like I said, and you have the food flavor and you're just using it as a counterpart, you cannot tell. And the Corona, you drop a lime in that thing, the Corona alcohol free, can't tell. So those are just a couple recommendations. If you were looking for something to supplement, sitting on the couch, you want to scratch the itch, but you don't want to drink, that's what I have to say about that. And Dan, I think you're having water too, right?
Yeah, I'm not drinking a beer, but you know what beer's made with? Water. And that's what I'm drinking.
All right. Well, let's go to Orange Bowl preview, fellas. Notre Dame against Penn State. Penn State +2. They are the underdog. I'm just going to start with my main key to this game as we kind of dissect it. This is going to come down to which QB is going to step up here, because I really don't know which one it's going to be. These are two really tough defense. Best QB wins the day, wins the game, Sam.
Yeah, it feels like it's going to be another slobber knocker, right? These are two really good defenses, and these are two offenses that haven't been super explosive. My personal bet's on the under, but if there was a quarterback to come out here and have a big game and an offense to play at their ceiling, my guess is it would be Penn State. They just have a few extra weapons. They're a little bit healthier in the running back room. So I think if you were going to see a team win this game by a few possessions, it would be Penn State, but I expect it to be pretty close.
What do you think, Dan?
I'm taking the under. Whatever it is, I'm taking it.
Yep, smart.
I think it's just going to be it's going to be a slugfest. It'll be interesting to see how Marcus Freeman game plans for Tyler Warren. How they game plan for Love and their other running backs and Riley's mobility. Drew Aller's not the slowest quarterback. It'll be interesting. I'm not a Drew Aller guy, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes. And I'm really kind of rooting for Penn State's downfall just because I don't need them to have more ammo on the recruiting trail in Virginia than they already do. I know not everyone shares my opinion on that, but
I think it's definitely a matchup of two teams that a lot of people in our fan base dislike very much. Like a lot of Tech fans hate Notre Dame and they hate Penn State because of regionality or whatever. Like on the East Coast, those are two of the biggest fan bases. Like they're huge. And we're also more or less in the Mid-Atlantic on the East Coast. And so I think a lot of people out there that root for the Hokies are, hoping a bomb drops on the stadium or something, but all said in jest, by the way. Both defenses are so good. I do think Notre Dame's is better. I think it's a slightly better defense, especially with the unknown of what's going on with Abdul Carter, because he was nursing his shoulder at the end of that game. Franklin's pretty optimistic about him being able to go, but it didn't seem like an insignificant injury. And so I'm going to give the defensive edge to Notre Dame. They both have great rushing offenses. There, I also think Notre Dame's a bit better, especially if you factor in their quarterback. I love Katron Allen. I love Singleton. But if you're giving me the package of Notre Dame's two running backs and Leonard and the two running backs on Penn State and Aller, I'm going to go there. The passing, when Aller is on, there's the edge there. So where does that leave me? I like Notre Dame to win the game. I think they're going to win. I think they'll cover the 2. I think Penn State has had a far easier path to get to this point. I never thought I'd be saying this after Notre Dame lost to NIU, but when the playoffs started, I loved their chances to get to a semi, and now I love their chances to get to a final. And I just think they've been a really tough team. They've got a more veteran quarterback. I think Leonard wins the day, and I think that experience gets it done for Notre Dame.
Abdul Carter is tweeting out videos of Darth Vader saying, quote, the revenge of the sticks for like 11-1-1. Stixley returns in, and it's just he's on a heater.
Okay.
Hey,
listen, I love a good Star Wars reference, so I'm into it.
If he plays, that could be if he plays, they could win a national title. Like, it's not crazy. I know Ohio State looks unbeatable, but Ohio State's also looked kind of bad at points this year. If they don't, he's that good. Drew Aller has potential.
Here's a
any four of these teams could win the national title.
Here's a fun transitive property game. The team that Ohio State just beat the absolute piss out of beat Penn State a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And never really felt like they were going to lose to Penn State. And I get to the end of this season and I'm still wondering, has Penn State beaten an elite team? I don't think they have.
I mean, they've beaten teams who have won a lot of games.
They did.
For what that's worth.
They did. They beat a G5 champion. They beat an ACC team that barely got in. They beat USC barely. I look, it's hard to say when you're in a semifinal that you've beaten nobody, and I'm not saying they've beaten nobody.
They ain't played nobody, Paul.
But like, I think Indiana and Georgia are better wins than anything Penn State has.
Maybe, yeah. But I also think you can only play the teams ahead of you, and they've been pretty dominant this year.
And they crushed SMU. They crushed SMU.
Like you can play both sides of this coin. At the end of the day,
I'm trying to talk myself into my own pick here.
Hey, I don't think you need to. Notre Dame's a really darn good team. We've been saying that. If you're going with Notre Dame, go with them. I think Notre Dame, this is truly 50-50. But I think if it's going to land on the Penn State side of the coin, I think it's more likely that it ends up being a 7, 10, 14-point win. As opposed to it lands on the Notre Dame side of the coin, it's going to be a field goal win.
Penn State's been playing really good. Going back to the Oregon game, I know Oregon beat them, but Penn State played really well in that game. They played well the last 2 playoff games. So it's a hard game to pick. That's why the line's 2. Let's move to the Cotton Bowl. Ohio State against Texas. Texas 6-point underdogs. My main key for this one, I think, to start off the conversation is Ohio State's ability to pressure Dylan Gabriel. Will that show up again against a more mistake-prone quarterback? And Dan, I'll ask you first. What are your thoughts on the Cotton Bowl matchup?
I mean, if anybody has the horses to run with Ohio State, it's the Longhorns. They got firepower everywhere. It's all about protecting Quinn Ewers. I would not be opposed to some packages with Arch. With his mobility. If you need them, they have a great defense. I think they've played. I mean, they've had their moments where they mess up. I feel like every offensive coach tries to play FU ball at some point, and it comes back to make the game a little closer than it should be. But I don't know, man. I could see it. Like, if you told me Texas was going to win, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me Ohio State was going to win, I wouldn't be surprised. I do think Texas covers because it could just be a shootout and go to OT. I don't know. Like, I really don't know what's going to happen.
What are you thinking, Sam?
Yeah, I haven't really just been impressed that much with Texas lately, especially offensively. It seems like they can scheme up a few good plays, but some of their plays just take too long. Yeah, I mean, they're not looking. I thought they were looking elite at points in this season. Other games, they haven't. I do think they match up with Ohio State. If Ohio State's playing their best, I think Texas is maybe the best matchup against them. Texas will win the line of scrimmage in this game, I think. I think they're just better on the line of scrimmage than Ohio State is. And I think they have the defensive backs to be able to run their stuff. I don't think you're going to stop them, but you can run your stuff against them. It's really just about, like, does the offense run smoothly for 4 quarters? Because we haven't seen that out of Texas in a few weeks. And by a few weeks, I mean a few games.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is really the question mark. I have Ohio State -4.5. I'm kind of interested in Texas over 23.5 points because that's not a number that they've hit recently, but they certainly have the offensive talent to do that. And if, Dan, like you said, if this game gets a bit pass heavy early on and stuff, I like Texas's playmakers, man. I really do. So this is a tough game. I lean Ohio State. The market certainly is leaning Ohio State, but it should be a fun game.
I hope it is.
I hope it is.
I know. I haven't looked at the public money and maybe I should have before I make my pick. But I'm taking Ohio State -6, at least because that's all I can pick right now. It's not on a half point, so I'll take a -6. They have that elite defense. I think Texas' defense is really good. Ohio State has been awesome the last couple weeks. Even against Michigan, they only gave up, whatever it was, 13 points. They ran for 156 against Tennessee, a 181 against Oregon, an average of over 5 yards of carries if you want to combine those two games. They're finding that at the right time. I know Texas's O-line will perform better than what we just saw from Oregon. There is no doubt. But I still think Ohio State's going to come out firing, and they're going to try to confuse Ewers, and Ewers has been prone to confusion. And I like what Dan said about Arch. Like, I think we could see some Arch. Like, could we even see, Dan, a Tua situation? Like, if it's not going well at halftime, could we see Arch in the second half?
Maybe. I mean, does the fact that they're playing in the Cotton Bowl make a difference in this one, you think? Or no?
Something I did want to bring up because, it's a Texas playing in the Cotton Bowl. I know Ohio State's going to bring a ton of fans. So I don't know how much of an impact, but it's something. It's something to think about. It's a historic location for that team. I just like Ohio State, man. I know the Michigan game, like I said, I have to just put that aside. Like, I just have to. After what we've seen the last 2 weeks, that domination against Oregon, this line could be a little bit recency bias. That's what I was looking for. Recency bias because of what we just saw. But I don't know. Texas couldn't cover against Arizona State. I don't expect them to cover against a much better team. So that's where I'm at. I don't know if you guys have any final thoughts on the final two games.
I hope they're good, man.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can't get games Penn State, Notre Dame, and Texas, Ohio State, and we can't get close, competitive, exciting games, then maybe this sport just isn't meant for that. I don't know.
Do you think it's funny we don't have a traditional SEC team in the Final Four? Not like, and we shouldn't have had an SEC team in last year's Final Four either. But Texas, I'm not calling them traditional SEC because they just came from the Big 12. I know that they were in the SEC championship game, but what I'm talking about. You got 3 Midwestern Northeast teams in this thing.
Cannibalization. Yeah, I mean, they did this. They created the monster that's eating its own tail right now.
Yeah.
And, I think you're going to see it next year too. That's one of my 2025 predictions is the SEC does the exact same thing again.
Do you think the committee would be more likely to put in that extra SEC team next year?
No, not because it's the SEC, but because I don't think the Big Ten has an Indiana-like team again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was very unique. However, with these unbalanced schedules, there's no telling. I mean, we're going to run into something like it again. There's going to be some team where they ain't played nobody and they're 11-1.
Yep.
Virginia Tech. I'm just kidding.
It could be. Hey, we don't play nobody next year. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
That will not be the problem in Blacksburg.
That's going to be one of our upcoming episodes. Will be usually late January, Sam. We'll talk schedule. We'll kind of do a year in review. I know the boys did a little bit of that on their show that they put out earlier today. That would be Pat and Billy. We're going to do the national championship show in a couple weeks here. That's Monday night, the 20th of January. Who's ever in the game, you guys can save a screen for us. We're going to have some guests coming through. We're going to run it back because we did this last year. It was a lot of fun trying to get some people to come on the show that you guys would find interesting. Last year we had Bill Roth on, we had Josh Fugo, we had Tucker Holloway. It was great, and so many more. Dwight Vick. But we're going to bring back a bunch of guys this year and have some fun with that. So that's what you can expect from us the rest of this month. As for the rest of this week, we're done, Sam. I don't think there's no too deep coming this week. We did bowl recap. We did this. We're good. Dan, do you have anything upcoming the rest of this month you got going on over at Tales of the TerrorDome? I know you said you might not be going every week this offseason.
Yeah, I think I'm going to change it up a little bit. Probably be fewer episodes because that once a week, 52 weeks a year,
it's hard.
Like it's, I mean, by the time we got the football season, I was like, shit. But like, you know what I'm saying? So like, We'll see. It depends. Plus, the more people I interview, the less people I have to interview the next year. So I'm gonna try to. I'll probably be more selective.
I understand that. Well, this was a lot of fun, fellas. I'm looking forward to the rest of this week. I think that this game tonight, the FCS, that was getting a little out of hand. It was 21-3 at half.
Well, it was 21-18 a couple minutes ago.
Ooh.
And then North Dakota State just scored, so it's 28-18. But it's a close game. And if you want more bowl thoughts, I wrote an article on sonsofsaturday.com kind of about the bowl game, but more about what it means for Virginia Tech in 2025. And they're adding some of these portal additions. We'll have more articles about that. But so check sonsofsaturday.com if you want more pros style analysis about the Hokies.
Sweet. And if you made it to the end of the episode, the word to put in the comments on YouTube is 0. That is 0 as in free 0. And he freed himself to number 1. That's what Ollie Jennings did in this bowl game. But thank you, both of you, for coming on tonight. And until next time, go Hokies.
Go Hokies.